Hello and welcome to Simplified, the show where we break down the world to simplify it and sincerely hope that the world is still under full repair warranty. So yes, hello and welcome. We are here again, still Naren less because he is touring the magnificent United States of America. And we therefore decided to cover a topic that is actually quite trending in that country. So, but before we get to that topic, and we have our other two hosts, which is Tony and Chuck. And today we are going to cover a topic called right to repair. But before we get into that topic, I want to start by asking everyone, which is the electronic device that you have owned for the longest?
Nice. Fridge counts?
Yeah, I'm also using a white code only. So yeah, go for it.
Oh, okay, that's a bit of cheating, no?
That's still in use, basically, right?
That's still in use. That's a good
That's
question.
Still in use? Okay, that I don't, then mine gets disqualified. But sure, whatever floats your boat. Go ahead.
But I'm going to stick to what you had in mind more and not cheat by saying fridge and microwave and all these things. And actually, so my previous pair of headphones were a workhorse. Somebody had them for 5 years before I bought them, and I used them for 8 years, and now they're with another friend. So that thing's going on pretty strong. Yeah.
Ooh, and for how many years?
I don't know. So it must be a total of 15 years or something. I mean, that thing's out of production. So these things are pretty solid.
Excellent. Oh. And the older they get, the better they get, apparently.
Oh, well, we like to delude ourselves by thinking that way.
Excellent. Yeah. Tony, go ahead.
I don't know, man. I think it would have been my first Nokia phone only, which I had for 4 or 5 years. Nothing's lasted more, I don't think.
Excellent. For me, it's also a pair of headphones. In fact, the first pair of headphones I bought with my own money, which were a beautiful pair of Sennheiser open oral headphones, which Chuck had recommended to me at way back in 2012. And at the time when I was earning 35,000 salary, I spent $5,000 to buy them. So they were pretty precious. So yeah, I mean those headphones are still around actually, and they work also fine, except the foam has fairly rotted away. And so now that makes it extremely open oral, way too open oral. That is my oldest electronic. But also another, if I was to cheat and say the other electronic item that was there was a microwave that my parents had purchased in the Dubai Shopping Festival 1996. And that was retired only in 2021. Not for the fact that it stopped working, but for the fact that I thought we would all die of radioactivity or something. So I had it forcibly retired, unfortunately. Rest in peace, TVS Sanyo microwave.
We had a Blaupunkt TV brought from Germany in the 80s. And I think that lasted some 14 years or something till we got the next one for some World Cup or something like that. So yeah, very, very old German technology.
You had a fridge story, Chuck?
I didn't have a fridge story.
Okay.
Just wondering whether white goods were part of the conversation, whether anything with semiconductors, whether it qualifies or not. This can probably pick up some old toy or something from childhood.
Why not? Transistors.
Transistor radio. Okay.
Yeah. So this is where, I mean, it's actually, and that's actually a good opening segue to the opening of the episode, because I mean, when we think about things that have lasted us for a very long time, and obviously it is a very long time, was about at least 15, 20 years ago, which was the time when smartphones and the technology revolution hadn't fully taken over. But items used to, I mean, they say the truism that is there, that items that were made back in the days seem to last a lot longer than items that are made today. And
it's almost like a feature. That
exactly. And so before I get to the right to repair, the fundamental aspect that has led to the right to repair, one of those key aspects, is a phenomenon that actually isn't very new. It's actually existed for nearly a century, called planned obsolescence.
Interesting.
Right? So,
But before you get there, Srikeit,
yes.
I have a few observations to make.
Of course,
and fans of Simplified will know this. So today we are going to talk about the right to repair, mostly, which is about the right to fix your own gadgets. Srikeit, I'm guessing that's broadly right. This is not to be confused with several other terms that you might have heard and might get confused by. So this is not to be confused with the form that you actually need to physically fill out to claim your warranty. That is called right to repair. Right, WRIT. This is also not to be confused with the freedom to fart, which is the right to rip air. It is also not to be it is also not to be confused by that time that you're on the left side of a river, meaning that you have to take right to riparian. Just
okay.
Right, yeah. It is not to be confused by that age-old Malayali farming trick of planting abundant amounts of grass to get a second harvest of beans. That is right to repire.
Oh my God.
Also, it is not to be confused with traditional Republicans trying desperately to salvage their party. That is repair the right.
Oh,
well played.
Why not?
Back to the phenomenon we were talking about. Sorry, I had that written out in the Google Docs. I just had to get that out of the way.
The episode is truly broken now. I hope we have the right to repair. But anyway, so
warranties at simplified.co.
But anyway, the aspect that actually leads to the right to repair movement actually having passed is the phenomenon of planned obsolescence. So actually, the origin of planned obsolescence isn't new at all. It's in fact, it sees its origins in a meeting that happened in 1927 between all the manufacturers of the light bulbs. Right. And so that particular August meeting of all these light bulb manufacturers discovered that their light bulbs on an average, when they launched the initial line, were running for about 2000 hours. Right. And all of them came to an agreement, which they put in their product designs together across different competitors, also all collaborated to make sure that the light bulbs only lasted, the filaments would burn out within 1000 hours only. So they halved the light bulb filament life. And so that was so basically that people would end up buying a lot more light bulbs, and that was the first example of planned obsolescence coming into play. Similarly, this planned obsolescence was also something that came into play with Ford versus General Motors. So Henry Ford, with his assembly line, as well as those very, very efficient processes, has also had a very clear motto of actually keeping products that were lasted really long, and also if they broke down, were very easily serviceable and the parts were interchangeable, right? Whereas General Motors, what they did was their entire philosophy when they opened with it was to have people change cars every year, right? Ideally, and this is way back in the 50s, 60s. So we are not even talking about the iPhone generation here. So they're still talking about like the 50s and 60s where they wanted to do that. So while for the significant amount of time, General Ford maintained its supremacy over the industry, the profits that General Motors raked in because of their planned obsolescence techniques in their cars actually made them the largest and the most profitable car manufacturers.
But why would anyone buy a GM then? I mean, knowing that they would break down in 1 year, or was
because again, so that's the other aspect of planned obsolescence. So there are two features of planned obsolescence, right? There is one aspect which is called forced obsolescence, which is where the product actually breaks down physically and actually stops working. But the other aspect, which is often paired with forced obsolescence, is perceived obsolescence. Perceived obsolescence is, yes, exactly. And perceived obsolescence is what we see all the time. OnePlus launching 3 models of OnePlus inside a year, right? And was the precise reason why first within a year itself, like within a few months of purchasing your phone, there's a new model out and suddenly your model is older and like suddenly you are discovering that you are 5. Like I purchased a OnePlus Nord in September of 2020, at which point it was the newest model at that time. And since September of 2020, and we are not even in September of 2022, and I think there have been 4 or 5 newer models released after that.
No one knows the current OnePlus model.
No, I think Chuck has the current one, right? OnePlus.
No, I have the one before this 9 Pro.
Oh wow, 9 Pro. So exactly. So I mean,
I
because
got
of
the less than. My strategy is always get the version that was before. It'll be 90% as good and 50% as expensive. So if the 10 is out, I'll buy them.
Yeah,
but this filament thing, right? It actually reminded me of couple of very tangential marketing examples. I think there was
tungsten shell.
A tungsten shell, very
tungsten
done.
was
Well
used
done.
in the bulb. Sorry, just trying to flex chemical engineering.
when these were fringe filaments, as it were. But anyway, I think the famous marketing one is about, I think it's anecdotal, I don't know if it's real, where Colgate wanted to increase the sales of its toothpaste. They basically increased the circumference of the tube itself, because everyone goes from end to end of a toothbrush. So if you increase the circumference, more volume will pop out. So people
that's interesting. I heard other stories like they put in, the whole brushing every day was never a habit.
Till
we all went through engineering successfully.
These were very common hostile facts that were used as crutches and excuses for many things.
Holding out against big engineering college hostels, holding out against big advertising.
The other fun story was the origin of Michelin star restaurants, basically.
Oh, okay.
Which happened in the early 1900s when Michelin basically made tires for cars. In France, there were a total of 3,000 cars at that point in time. So they wanted people to drive more so they could sell more tires. So they started releasing these guides called Michelin guides to explore various places. And that's how Michelin star restaurants came in. Basically, 1 star meant that it was a good restaurant in its categories. 2 stars meant worth taking a detour, and 3 stars meant, having a special ride for itself. So basically trying to get people to use more to, wear and tear of the tire. But now Michelin star restaurants are a thing on its own. But back to right to repair. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no. So, in that, the right to repair actually was a much later movement. There was a larger evolution of, so the auto industry was the first industry that was like on an industrial level kind of did this planned obsolescence bit. It also came to aspect where, so there was actually one really pretty genius as in malevolently genius idea that a champion spark plug company that itself had built its success on copying foreign spark plug designs was sold to Buick. Okay. And so what happened is they were actually sued because it was discovered that while they were selling, so they were asking for, like, they used to have this thing where the spark plugs needed to be changed every month, year or something like that, where the warranty or the repair of the car would be void unless the spark plugs were regularly changed. And what they did was they would take, but they were charging a lower amount for taking the spark plugs and changing them. So people were obviously giving their old spark plugs over there. What this Srikeit company was doing was they were actually refurbishing those old spark plugs and selling them as reselling them again. So they were taking the old spark plugs and reselling them to people. So it's effectively if you and Tony are using a car, you have a car. So I will take the spark plug from your car, refurbish and put it on Tony's car. It takes Tony's spark plug and put it on your car and charge you guys both money for it.
Wow.
I think pretty sad that Naren's not here, but I think in the automotive spare parts industry, if you want to get it repaired at a local thing, you have something called original, which is the original spare part. There is a duplicate, which is like cheap made, and then there is an original duplicate, which comes in between both of these things. So like a Goldilocks fit. So you don't have to spend as much on the new part, but I'm guessing it's one of these recycled ones that come about.
Wow. Yeah, that's what I really wish Naren was here as well, because as in the manufacturing industry, you would have some really interesting examples. But also what happened is here, one other, later on what happened was there was this, so the other aspect where spare parts sale was restricted, or an ability to kind of use spare parts was restricted, was when it came to further along, when it came in the field of printer ink cartridges. So
of course.
So Hewlett Packard. So initially, what happened is there were while printers were being sold to people and everybody, like, we were buying printers, the lucrative and the repeatable aspect of printer purchase was the ink cartridges. Now, what happened was that ink cartridges was the lucrative business model that was keeping the printer companies working. But in fact, the business model was the ink ended up charging far more than the printer cost altogether when the initial model was created. Now, people also started discovering that you could refill those cartridges yourselves. And there was a brief, massive dip in sales as far as cartridges were concerned when people discovered they could do that themselves. What manufacturers started doing was they started placing microchips counting the fill levels and usage on cartridges, rendering refills impossible or at least harder. So in which case and sometimes those microchips would fail and it would actually declare full cartridges to be empty and the printer would stop working altogether because those microchips were not working properly, and this actually caused a whole bunch of printers to stop working because those chips were refused to accept that a particular cartridge is full or empty. So finally, so this particular activity, this practice actually of having microchips stopping usage of a particular product because they perceive that cartridge is empty was found to be illegal, and therefore in 2017 they tried to sue against this practice of reproduction and refilling of cartridges, so which was eventually finally affirmed to be legal in 2017 by the US Supreme Court.
Even our Mr. Butler's soda maker doesn't do this, Chuck. They let us.
We should do a complete episode on Mr. Butler's soda.
Mr. Butler's soda. Also, I think one of the only household items to be made in Kerala or.
Yeah, I know, right?
Registered of Cochin or something.
The printer story reminds me of these pens like Uniball, right? The one that aren't exactly fountain pens, aren't exactly ball pens, but basically have free ink flowing, like the Uniball I and the Pilot V, those kind of pens. They are, in the rest of the world, they're meant to be disposable. And I'm sure this is in other developing countries as well, but India is the only place where I've seen where there's a industry, a very small industry, of course, where you have stationery shops that will actually remove the thing and they'll refill the ink and they'll give it back to you. So even those disposable pens have become reusable in some way. So, but thankfully, unlike your HP printer, it's not like the pen gave an error message saying cannot write to say pen incompatible or something. Imagine if you go for an exam or something and that's the only pen you have.
Yeah.
So this is where actually things got interesting. So now till it was limited, so from the auto industry to technology started kind of creating this planned obsolescence, and nowhere really was there we're approaching the turn of the century, and which is 2000, and there was still no real regulation or any real desire for regulation to come in. But as is norm with the US, the biggest push when it came for regulation was when it came from the heartland of the US, that there was a right to repair requirement, which actually came with the most unlikely product that you could think of. And maybe we can talk about that product on the other side of this break. So see you there.
Wow, kept us hanging.
Welcome back. We are talking about the right to repair. And before the break, we was talking about the product that actually caused the entire right to repair movement to catalyze and take and start moving. And Chuck and Tony, this is a product that is as heartland a product as it can get.
Tractors.
John Deere tractors.
John Deere tractors. You guys have clearly done your...
Okay, no, we haven't done our research.
We didn't discuss this in the break.
We don't know. It's sad that that's what we think of Heartland America, but hey, the whites still think that we have snakes over here.
Yeah, so,
or snake charmers.
No, but like I keep saying, in a marketing context, we don't call it a stereotype. We call it marketing insight. So
insight. But no, you guys are perfectly right. It is actually John Deere tractors. So John Deere tractors, as evolution of tractors also started happening over a period of time. Like there's a beautiful Vice documentary on this entire John Deere tractor problem and that evolution of tractors. And tractors started off being these very, very jugaad implements, which were made with a bunch of stuff put together, an engine put together and a bunch of stuff constructed around it. And for the entire evolution for the entirety of the 20th century, these tractors were actually effectively built and rebuilt and kind of constructed and reconstructed by farmers themselves, and they were become pretty proficient at kind of maintaining their tractors themselves. But as the 21st century approached, the tractor slowly started getting computerized components, and to a point where now every single component in the tractor is linked to that central computer that a tractor has. And here is where John Deere actually made it completely opaque. Those tractors are hardy implements that are used, but they are controlled by a computer. Now, if you had a single component that suddenly stopped functioning, the tractor itself would stop functioning. Now, John Deere said that it was because of safety concerns or whatever, but the farmers are like, here they're sitting that so firstly, John Deere initially never had like on-site service or anything like that. So this farmer was like, in the interview, the farmer's literally like, if my tractor stops functioning, I need to hire a rig. I need to load the tractor onto that rig, and that it's a huge tractor. I will load the tractor onto the rig, get it carried to the John Deere dealership where they will repair it, which will cost me money. And that just getting the tractor to the dealership would cost him $1,000, right?
Whoa.
So this guy was like, there is no way I'm going to go do that. So actually,
it's fair to say John Deere had its detractors by this point.
Pretty much. And this is where actually it was the emergence of the least likely category of people that you could imagine were farmer hackers, right? So a bunch of these farmers discovered how to hack into the diagnostics panel of those tractors. So literally you had these like farmers wearing like proper redneck, suspenders and clothes, and carrying a laptop with a USB and going and plugging it into their tractors.
Oh wow!
And hacking it and trying to figure out the diagnostics of where the problems are, and actually like fixing them themselves. So they started doing this where they were trying to find out exactly where the problems are. So farmers were doing it themselves. There were people who were former employees of John Deere who were helping out these farmers, like trying to set up these particular, trying to hack into this whole thing. And obviously, the farmers got together and they kind of went and tried to. They said, okay, fine, we need to get this stopped and get this fixed. So that's where, for the first time in 2005, and this is the most incredible thing. So here is where, from farming, we go to a very common law that you as a music lover will be very familiar with, Chuck, the DMCA. Right. So DMCA was...
It's YMCA.
So the DMCA was...
That. Okay. Tony's act of surprising us once every 3 episodes with a musical reference which you do not expect. I think all of us take turns, right? Like I'll pop in some football reference randomly and stick it like, wow, you knew that, and whatever.
or I'll drop in a chemical engineering reference somewhere. And so that
why chemical? Because I'm a chemical engineer.
Yes. But anyway, so the point was, what that resulted in was actually one of the rare exemptions that was added to the DMCA, which made it, and because again, it started off because of tractors, and this is where it actually finally became legal to jailbreak devices. So jailbreaking as such, which was like removing them from software blocks that prevented you from actually like accessing the diagnostics and the backends of the phone, that jailbreaking became legal. So phones, speakers, appliances, and nearly everything else.
So it was a law that started, that was for tractors, but then did it get expanded eventually to everything else?
No. When they passed the law itself, because they had to create it. So they wanted to create it, like the Microsoft and the Apple guys actually turned up. So this started in Nebraska, so in the middle of nowhere, and there's having these hearings, and the Microsoft and Apple guys are flying in and having and fighting along with the John Deere tractor guys and trying to figure out why are their systems now going to be jailbroken. But the law was like upheld over there. And so basically
it's like now, IAPM lawsuits in Guwahati or something like that.
No, the ironic part was they might have passed this only for tractors, but once the Microsoft and Apple guys started landing up, the lawmakers must have been like, why are these guys coming up? Okay, so all right, looks like they have some dog in this fight.
Yeah, and these guys were like, I mean, they are the big tech companies, and they're effectively taking a fight against like tractor hackers. So, so that was where the jailbreaking thing came in, and also it allowed for not just unlocking the backends of your devices, but also allowing you to install custom software onto your hardware, right? Which was also prevented before that. So actually, a lot of, and John Deere still made it quite difficult for people to jailbreak their tractors effectively. So this is where a lot of these Nebraska Midwest farmers were actually downloading pirated Russian software for their tractors to use it there so that they could
Let's
use
just
their
appreciate
tractors.
the beauty of their line. You had a Nebraska farmer who's downloading illegal firmware from a Russian site for his tractor. Please continue. The 21st century is living up to every promise that it had for us.
Is this the origin of the nursery rhyme, The Farmer in the Dell? No.
I have no idea what this nursery rhyme is, but it's great.
I have no idea either. But this is amazing. Yeah, so that's what. So these digital right to repair acts actually for the first time started getting passed in. They started getting passed in like Nebraska and South Dakota and places like this where you would not really expect them to happen, right? And so that's where the first time this right to repair movement got codified, and it has like 4 fundamental requirements. All right. The 4 fundamental requirements of right to repair acts are that the device should be constructed and designed in a manner that allows repairs to be made easily. Now, with each of these points, I will talk about how certain tech companies have actually like tried to circumvent this. When you're saying constructed and designed in a manner that allows repairs to be made easily, here comes in our genius product, genius company, which is the Apple iPhone. And here is where what they did was, once jailbreaking was allowed, once say you could get where custom repairing is legal, but they tried to make it as difficult as possible is where when they released, I think the iPhone 10 or 11, they invented a new type of screw, which was this 5-star pointed screw, which literally there is no screwdriver implement for it, right? It is a custom screw that's been implemented so that people couldn't actually access that and open that screw panel unless they built themselves a new screwdriver.
Yeah, so to be fair to Apple, it is easy to repair, but as long as you have that screwdriver, it is actually...
Or build it yourself.
It is actually a screwdriver for like, I don't know, $1,000.
I think it's much more profitable to have devices break down completely. But so they had the screw that was inaccessible. And the other aspect which Apple also started doing was one of the key things that Apple continues to use to make its devices as difficult as possible to be repaired is the glue they use to keep the items together. So that glue itself. Now, what it does is that glue is something that once the device is opened and when that specific glue is not used to reseal the device, that glue is a specific kind of manufactured glue that conducts electricity or whatever. Nobody is really been able to figure it out yet. But that glue, when one item is just taken out and replaced right as is, a functional item is removed and a functional component is removed and replaced, if that glue does not affix properly, that part of the product will stop working. So they have used like stuff like this glue and all that stuff.
I thought Steve Jobs was the glue that held Apple together.
Yeah.
I was waiting for one of these to come up. But
it definitely took a cook to make the glue. So
wow, well done.
So that was one aspect of what they did. Now the second one is end users and independent repair providers should be able to access original spare parts, tools, software, as well as physical tools needed to repair the device at fair market conditions. Right. Now, this again was something that Apple fought furiously against. So one thing was that not only were they preventing people from getting access to the tools and stuff like that, but they were also preventing access to spare parts. So, but what the repair community actually did was they were getting spare parts from what was called donor devices. So you could like have a device which is bricked largely, but in those brick devices, you could actually just pick up what are the parts that are functional and use them in the donor devices. Apple actually started figuring out that, okay, this is happening, and they did one thing. So there are plenty of demo videos where person has purchased brand new out of the box 2 identical iPhones, opened them up and transferred the one component from one phone to another phone and just interchange components between 2 brand new iPhones, and they have immediately stopped working. And those what they did was they actually kind of like, until a certain amount of either software block or hardware block was overcome which was done inside the Apple Service Center if say authorized repair was taking place. If you were to just replace functional components between phones also, they would immediately stop working. Right?
That's crazy. Is this a hardware thing or a software thing?
Nobody has really been able to figure out yet.
Oh, wow.
There's some combination of the two. So one thing that Apple has very, very carefully, which is the first thing to break down, is the camera function, right? So if you actually open the phone, the very first thing that stops working is, even if the camera is working, Face ID stops working immediately. So Face ID is the first thing to break down. And second is that the camera function will start becoming weird and like not functioning properly. Camera will not focus and eventually just die completely. So these are some of the issues that come. Finally, repair should by design be possible and not hindered by software programming, which is clearly also something that Apple does not allow. And finally, the repairability of the device should be clearly communicated by the manufacturer. Now, here is where also Apple has done a brilliant job of. Actually, they are, so some of the specs of, so what has happened is what are called the layouts, or I forget what the name was, something equivalent to a floor plan of a phone. Right. Sure. So what they did was those floor plans of a phone for the MacBook Pro were leaked out from the Chinese factories that were there. So the workers that leaked actually the particular blueprints were actually like sued to heaven and hell high. But those leaked blueprints can be legally downloaded and used by all these guys, because again, there's a right to repair. If you have access to data, you can use it, right? So they could legally download it. So now, especially for the newer products, I think Apple has gone to a place where they are actually not communicating. It's like the Coke recipe, that nobody has the full recipe at any point of time. So nobody has the full blueprint at any point of time. It keeps rotating in some way or the other. And there is that's how they're actually managing the different schematics. So the right to repair also demands that those schematics actually be provided to the repair people to actually work and how to build their particular products. So yeah, so that's how this particular right to repair issue has been handled overall. And now, so what has happened, and the reason why this has come to prominence again recently, is that 20 different states, there is 20 different states, which is California, Georgia, Hawaii, Illinois, Indiana, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, North Dakota, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, South Dakota, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, and West Virginia. All of these states have simultaneously considered a right to repair bill with all of these aspects into that particular thing. Now, obviously, this
you already got the bill.
Yeah. So they've actually a bill. Yeah, definitely. So it has already been given at least. But as these particular products were, as these right to repair bills were there, obviously they got mired into Congress because lobbyists started paying the right people and started putting them in, trying to mothball them. So Joe Biden earlier, I think last year, he passed an executive order, which was, he passed this executive order, which was called Promoting Competition in the American Economy, which was a sweeping array of initiatives across the executive branch. Among them included instructions to the FTC, which is the Federal Trade Commission, to craft rules to prevent manufacturers from preventing repairs performed by owners or independent repair shops. Right. So he passed an executive order. Now, you need to know, executive order is basically just as good as mere liye kar de please. Right. There is no binding liability as far as the Federal Trade Commission is concerned. But however, here, because again, the Democrats had a little bit of the power, the Federal Trade Commission actually just in late 2021, actually through a unanimous vote, enforced the right to repair as policy, and will look to take action against companies that limit the type of repair work that can be done at independent repair shops. Wow. Now, while they have passed this regulation and this legislation, there is really very little enforceability at this point. And especially what's happening is because software is used in ways where, it's come to a point where you don't know where planned obsolescence is being included into the software code. Something as simple as, the thing is, planned obsolescence comes in such a nefarious way where they're saying that something as simple as software updates, right? So software updates slowly and over a period of time as this thing goes, newer versions, the software update is mandatory. And as soon as the software update happens, your device performance will go down. The second thing is when you're actually doing these, the product repairs, if you're trying to do these product repairs, the product actually will, as soon as you open the product, irrespective of whoever is opening it, they have constructed them in a certain way that those products actually brick themselves as soon as you open them. So therefore, now a whole bunch of independent repair shops also are afraid to open phones, because if they try to open it and they brick the phone, which only had a small problem, and the consumers will then screw them their happiness. So
they can't screw them over if it's an Apple, because the screw they need a 5-star.
Perfect.
But didn't Tim Cook admit as much? He said something like the phones are deliberately slowed down to protect the consumer or some rubbish like that. He said this a couple of years back. Right?
Yeah, no. So the thing is, what Apple's party line, or even Samsung for that matter, what their line is that the reason they are preventing these repairs from happening is because their standard policy of whenever there is a, say, water damage happens or a particular product is brought in for, say, authorized service, is that they replace the entire motherboard of the phone and they provide the phone back. Now, the reason they replace the entire motherboard is to prevent from malfunction happening, and they have actually conveniently used the Samsung's catching fire thing and kind of like put the fear out there, saying that if you repair it wrongly, then the product can malfunction and even catch fire and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's their party line that they use regularly. But
that's the reason why Bhavish Agarwal himself will repair any Ola Electric that catches fire.
Hey, you shut up. We know you're like a fan of Aether stock and all. Okay, don't try to
don't push it.
So so let's look at what is the biggest reason for, what is the most important reason for the right to repair? Yes, we as consumers should have right for the product that we purchase to have a right to repair for it. But what's the biggest impact of this lack of right to repair? The biggest thing is e-waste, right? So e-waste is like there's huge amounts. There's like 3.5 million tons of e-waste that's been created every year in products that are actually more often than not fairly functional and can actually be used for a significant amount of time beyond that. So and also the other thing being that what tends to happen, e-waste, when it's actually recycled properly, can still be reused and it goes back into the system. The biggest problem, and this is something I am also guilty of, is this is my OnePlus 6, and that is unused electronic devices lying around the house, right? So a whole bunch of electronics are getting out of the ecosystem. Up to 95% of the raw materials used to produce electronic devices can be recycled. But if they are not recycled, a whole bunch of, we all tend to hold at least some electronic devices that are not working in our houses. It's significantly higher in places in advanced and developed countries where
several cables, which we don't know what they do.
Yeah. So in Italy, for example, 52% of the population own one or more unused electronic items due to obsolescence or unrepaired mechanical damage or electronic failure. So because there is also not enough of even in developed countries of how to effectively recycle electronic waste, we tend to hold all these unused electronic devices, and what that creates, and because of this obsolescence, because we continue to hoard these electronic devices, we are creating and consuming far more devices without recycling the old ones. And so that is actually creating a major scarcity problem. The only case that has been sufficiently made against the right to repair to some extent is in the automotive space. So where they have said that this repairing and using vehicles beyond a certain point of time causes overall lifetime emissions to go up, right? So therefore, what requires to be done is that average. So in Europe, of course, they calculated what the average age of after which a car needs to be replaced is 14.4 years. And those vehicles need to be worked out. So they've actually developed an entire policy of how cars need to actually be recycled after that time, or at least their catalytic converters need to be actually worked on again.
But as such, there are sort of emission rules, right? And you have
they have emission rules, but beyond so that's where. But beyond, say, 14.4 years, there are certain essential components of the cars that cannot be upgraded or repaired or recycled to a certain extent. So that's when you actually have to junk your car and buy a new one or something like that.
This is definitely true in the case of Ola Electric, again, which if you don't repair it, it will catch fire and emissions will come out through the smoke from the fire. So it's definitely true. This is in the automotive industry, even electric.
So so that is a bit about the
right. Go ahead.
Tony, go ahead.
No, I was just checking in parallel, like how is this starting in the US, and I checked for Europe right to repair, and I think it's still not, like, they're still deliberating. It's coming, but it's not come yet. Very, very strange that US is getting such a law.
Because I mean, the one example that I saw which was ridiculous is that for a MacBook Pro, there was a service cost for the MacBook Pro was so the MacBook Pro, a new MacBook Pro, which was purchased at say $999. When after immediately after 1 year, if it's gone to get it repaired, the official service charge is $799. At which point the Apple Store genius turns to you and says, just buy a new one. And whereas when it was taken to, with the schematics, when it was available, when it was taken to an independent repair shop, that repair was done within $150.
Yeah.
So
the same thing happened with my big ass LG TV that I have at home, 56-inch, which I bought for some 60K like 3 years ago or something. It just like went blank, and I obviously called the official sort of LG repair person. He came very professionally, unscrewed, unplugged some 2 things, plugged it back, put it back, wall mounted it. Then he's like, "Sir, naya TV khareed lijiye." I'm like, "What?" So, and then I ended up paying him like some $500 just for him to tell me that. Then I got a local repair guy. He's fixed it for like 12,000 rupees. So basically, I mean, both of them were suggesting that TVs are not built to last nowadays. In 3 years, it will go anywhere. So you, when you buy something, plan accordingly and buy.
That's crazy.
The depreciation. But
no, I remember. I mean, this might be the one good thing we say about Apple. They actually have a fairly large recycling facility somewhere in Texas. I think they made a bit of PR about it a few years ago, and that was fairly sophisticated. Where, in short, they had a program where they asked people to send in their iPhones. I think even offering them a rebate on subsequent phones or Apple products that they buy, and they showed all these how the screen is taken apart, how you have different settings for different kinds of phones, so it will detect which phone it is, and then the star screw will come accordingly and all that, and strip away all the valuable elements like gold, put that separately and all that. And to me, what was interesting about that was even Apple, with such a program like this and with the investment in infra that they have, even they find it difficult to recycle phones. So I know we are moving a little away from right to repair as such over here, but it just seems like there is a huge problem. I mean, it's not as simple as, okay, I'll take this phone, give it to e-waste, and everything is sorted. Same sort of problem in plastic recycling, I guess, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just another point altogether.
It's actually points to a larger trend of, I mean, this entire, and also couple this with the semiconductor shortage that's happening. That this huge boom that we have, and like there's an underlying assumption that electronics will solve everything, and you can find an electronic for everything that you need, an electronic component or an electronic item for whatever you need, and like that there is an assumption of plenty or unlimitedness when it comes to these things. The one thing is that, firstly, like with the semiconductor shortage, you can't really always bank on finding the right products, and if that semiconductor shortage, it could recur again, and if it ever got worse, then it would be, then your that steady supply of the bloodstream would cut out. And the second thing is, we have only been through maybe 2.5 decades of mass large scale semiconductor usage,
and hardly a decade of smartphones.
A decade of smartphones where like every single person has it. So the problem of e-waste is only like effectively in its infancy right now. And the problem of recycling and reusing these components, and a lot of components, like for example, I wouldn't say exactly e-waste, but when you talk about automobiles, right? I was reading about the catalytic converters, and a lot of those catalytic converters, the key component of those catalytic converters is palladium, right? And palladium is extremely, extremely rare, right? And so it said that unless the catalytic converters, like 100% of the catalytic converters are regularly recycled, where the palladium is extracted from them and reused in future ones, that like we could run out of palladium, right, in the world. And so similarly, there are some very extremely some extremely rare components that are used, elements that are used inside semiconductor creation or in the process of creating semiconductors. And right now they're just taken under the assumption that we have it and it'll last forever, but this cannot be taken for granted. And And pinning all of humanity's success and future hopes on semiconductors is a bit of a challenge then.
Yeah, it almost makes me wonder if do you think there is scope for a manufacturer to come out and actually say, hey, here's a phone that's actually going to last 10 years, where you show durability as a USP. Like I've been seeing, because now there is this anti-fast fashion trend, right? At least among people who can afford it. Like I've seen like really expensive pair of jeans. Like I'm talking about $1,500 jeans or $800 jeans or something like that. These are not like Gucci and all that rubbish. This is built for durability. These might be expensive right now, but they're going to last you for 25 years. Do you think there's scope for like a phone like that? Like a phone that says, hey, buy this and the next phone you have to buy is in 10 years.
So actually there is a phone like that, and I didn't really do my research on it, but I did see the name, which is something called the Fair phone. Yeah, that is the OG. But actually, there is a phone that's been that was actually founded 9 years ago, almost. It's called the Fair phone. This company manufactures smartphones with the goal of having a lower environmental footprint and better social impact. So, for example, it firstly has like this minimizes the use of conflict minerals in its devices. Minerals, So conflict minerals are minerals like coltan, cassiterite, gold ore, and wolframite. Right? These are conflict minerals that are used from conflict regions. They maintain fair labor conditions and they allow the users to maintain their own devices.
Wow.
Right. And here is also where, Chuck, something that we discussed previously was the modular smartphone.
Yeah.
Right. So this Fair phone is also a modular friendly smartphone where it supports. So in September 2021, they announced a modular smartphone that supports 5G connectivity, has like dual 48 megapixel cameras and all that stuff. And like it allows for the phone to be repairable, customizable by the user, and their CO2 emissions are lower by 30% than the average phone. So this is the Fair phone, and they've started this entire movement. It still seems a pretty niche, like European kind of movement. It's
I mean, the fact that we haven't heard about it and we'd like to consider ourselves reasonably tech savvy.
Absolutely,
and
the difference between obviously a jeans and a phone is that the jeans doesn't need to do anything different 2 years from now, right? But the phone, on the other hand.
Yeah, that's fair. But I guess that's where the modularity aspect comes in. But absolutely, there are challenges to this. By the way, we've spoken almost on right to repair and all that without mentioning iFixit, which I think warrants a mention over here. iFixit is a website /movement/ whatever thing is / online store, which has evangelized fixing phones. Basically they've been evangelizing the right to repair for years now, and I'm very sure they've been filing cases and been active lobbyists for all this. So basically on their store you can buy your own repair kits and all this. I'm guessing that star screwdriver you should find. And interestingly, they also have these ratings. Like this, the iPhone 13 is. What is the iFixit score of that? And I think this Fair phone is the only one that has a 10 on 10 rating. So
And what also obviously has happened is, like, I think to some extent, while iPhone is doing these star screws and all that stuff, they're basically painting a huge target on their back, right?
Yeah.
When you do this, you are basically inviting the world's hackers and tweakers and tinkers to come and kind of hack my phone and figure out the way they can do it. So far, I mean, while there have been certain components, and I mean, there isn't enough information in the research that I did overall, where I didn't have all the data points on how deeply they've gotten into the repair ecosystem of Apple. But clearly, every single model that's been released that to a great extent is repairable. There are people out there who can repair it. There are certain aspects that are not openable, but it just takes a matter of time before there is a leak from somewhere and they get the schematics and then they are able to repair it entirely. So, I mean, if there is something that's made and it's given to you and you have the right to open it yourself, it probably can be repaired. So,
by the way, this only applies to electronics, not humans. So please don't try to open up your friend or something like, it's hurting, wait. There are some things that only
in India, at least, there is a sort of informal network of repair that happens, right? I mean, like, you can definitely exchange your old phone or something, even if Amazon doesn't take it, your local sort of electronic.
I mean, I know this.
That's a secondary market.
I really wonder, see, that's
What
the
happens after
secondary
that,
market
right?
is. Yeah, I really wonder how the secondary market works, because places like Cashify, they accept fully bricked, dead old phones, right? And so they clearly have a very robust recycling network where they're,
Yeah.
I mean, like the fancy Apple factory, they have probably got one in
Yeah.
like in Bhandup or something, where they open up these phones and like do
Yeah.
shit with them. But
Yeah.
I know this because I was looking this up. I was looking up, giving away I found my old OnePlus 3 lying somewhere, and it's dead, bricked, all of that, fully, not turned on for several years. And I was looking on Cashify, and they were actually offering me $600 for that phone.
Oh, they were giving you money also for it.
Yeah, $600 for that bricked dead phone. And I was like, damn. I mean, if I'm getting $600, they're clearly getting at least double the value out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Wow.
so clearly,
And even with
recycling.
cars, right? I mean, if they're stolen, basically they're sort of repurposed into parts and then put into the network. It's not like they drive the
that's
car
what
around.
The donor car network is extremely robust in India as well, where you
Donor
suddenly these are what the phones that are that are dead for some perspective become donor phones. So donor car network is extreme. In India, especially I know for a fact that in Bombay, when there were or used to be these car thieves who were within a couple of hours of your car having been stolen, it would actually no longer be a car anymore. The parts would have gone in many different places, and suddenly that car ceased to exist. So
they're doing the sustainability activity for.
And hence bringing this episode to a nice circular close by going back to Henry Ford and
his assembly line shenanigans.
Yeah.
So
fascinating.
So that's that for the right to repair. And I truly wish Naren was there for this episode. I would have loved to hear his point of view on it.
Maybe we can have a part 2 when he's back.
Yeah, we can have a part 2 where we discuss how maybe he's part of that ring that is pulling apart cars and stuff.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That would be a good twist.
That was such a scandalous claim that for the first time this year, I've actually seen Tony's eyes.
Excellent.
Anyway,
so since we don't have Naren, Chuck, can you sign us off?
Yeah, I mean, stay safe, stay repaired.
Why not?
There were very few.
Stay obsolete.
Stay modular.
Stay repairable.
Stay modular.
Stay repairable. Stay repairable.
Stay repairable.
Nice that's the objective we were all looking for. And stay repairable, of course.
See you next week, guys. Bye-bye.
Do not attempt to take apart this episode. If so, our lawyers will be in touch. Thank you.